why now? Like, what is it about this moment that there's so much activity in commercial space?
Yeah, so that's a great question. A lot of people have been trying to do things in space for decades now. And what has usually happened is they kind of flame out in the startup phase when they're trying to get early financing. You know, space companies, you can't really start that with 2 people in your garage. You need a large, well-educated workforce, you need large facilities, probably have to have access to a wind tunnel and launch pads and test stands. That's very expensive. And a lot of the startups would basically just hit a wall when it came to the financing phase. So we didn't get a lot of space startups over the years. Some made it, but not a lot. What changed about 10 or 12 years ago is we got an influx of self-financed individuals, very wealthy individuals that wanted to do something in space. Elon Musk, perfect example. Jeff Bezos. Richard Branson, he uses a lot of other people's money, but he has leveraged it very well. Robert Bigelow. Those people got through the early financing phase because they were mostly self-funded. And since they were successful entrepreneurs, they brought a laser-like focus on costs and efficiencies that we didn't necessarily have in the aerospace program or the aerospace industry prior to that. I would say we got fairly conventional because there weren't startups coming up and disrupting our industry. We got to favor conventional technology that worked. If it was expensive, we just kind of got used to that. And so with these entrepreneurs came in, really disrupted our industry, the aerospace industry, and had a focus on cost. So then the cost of space transportation has gone down, and suddenly business plans that didn't close before can close today. And I think that's part of the reason why you're seeing so much activity in commercial space today. Another factor, and I'm not going to take credit for this being from NASA, but NASA has helped to some extent.
Right, so talk about where NASA's role is in all this and how, frankly, Americans should think about the fact that it is now a private government cooperation as opposed to the United States of America is going to put a man on the moon.
Right.
You know, we all know John F. Kennedy said that, and then we did it by the end of the decade, and that's something that we still think about as Americans as one of our greatest accomplishments as a nation. But this is, again, a private industry is participating. Yeah,
that's a great point. I would say in the early space age, it was very much just like you described. NASA was in charge. We were the customer with a capital C, and we used private industry to basically develop hardware to our specifications based on our decisions, and it was government-owned hardware. So that was a relationship that NASA had with the private sector for probably 30 years, the first 30, 40 years of our existence. And what we're seeing today is more willingness for NASA to partner with private industry, for them to do things and own the intellectual property, own the hardware, and use that hardware for other customers beyond just NASA. And when they do that, costs come down even further, and it amortizes their business base over a larger business base, their overhead costs over a larger business base. Our costs go down, new markets come to life, and the industry does better. So it's very much like my kids say, more better.
More better.
We got more people doing more things in space. It's not just one way. They're not displacing NASA necessarily because there's always the next horizon for NASA to go to, where there's not necessarily a profit margin, where there's not necessarily other customers. I can't see many other customers for a Mars capability today. Maybe in the future, but today pretty much that's going to be NASA's thing.
So what is the next frontier that you're most excited about right now?
You know, that's a great question. I get that question all the time.
I bet you do. I can imagine.
You know, what's next? I got it right after we announced the last thing, which was Commercial Crew. We announced that about 5 years ago now. We're almost through with development. As you probably know, we retired the space shuttle in 2011. It was a bittersweet moment for a lot of us at NASA, but it was time for that to be retired. Since that time, the only way we can get our astronauts up and down to the International Space Station is on a Russian Soyuz vehicle. And we pay over $80 million per seat on the Russian.
Per seat?
That's per seat. Yeah, that's a lot of money.
And you thought a first-class airline ticket was expensive, right?
Right,
That's a lot of money, okay.
That is a lot of money. So I'm in charge at NASA headquarters of the program that's developing U.S. capability to get humans back into space for the United States. We're partnering with 2 companies, SpaceX and Boeing, 2 very different firms, but they're competing, both doing great. And we hope to have launches to the International Space Station in 2017 or 2018. So certainly by next year, you'll probably see some test flights, and we're really excited about it.